5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
How about we do it again?
6, 7, 4, 3, 2, 1. I think I followed it.
Okay, let's try one more
I
time.
definitely.
Ready?
Ranking review. Ranking review. Ranking review.
Say 6,
6,
5,
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome to another fun-filled episode of Rank and Review. This episode, I'm stepping outside of my comfort zone. Usually when we're talking about genre cinema or sci-fi or fantasy or horror, I kind of know what I'm talking about, but I must admit to some ignorance when it comes to Blacksploitation. And I use this podcast for, well, many things, but on top of, exposing to the world how nerdy and crazy I am over horror movies and genre cinema, I've also tried to stretch my experience of movies, We've done episodes on musicals or the Rocky franchise, which is not my typical cup of tea. And this week will be another one. Your regular R&R MVP, Mr. Lee Beckmann, and I are going to talk about Blaxploitation movies and my experience of them. And I think, let's be real, some of these are 40, 45 years old, made before I was born and perhaps not for me. So this is a journey that we shall take together. And maybe don't take my word for it because, again, usually I feel like I know what I'm talking about. This was a new experience, so experience it with me. And give me feedback about what you think. If you have any words to tell me, you can do that at ranknreview@gmail.com. That's ranknreview @gmail.com. Please check out the page at ranknreview.ca. If you're a Facebook person, check it out on Facebook. If you're a Twitter person, check it out on Twitter. I am Rank and Review. My name is Larry Parsons, your host and random Canadian. Please be aware that there is coarse language in this podcast, and there will be spoilers for the 6 movies that we're talking about. Without any further ado, I invite you to enjoy Blaxploitation. All right, Mr. Beckmann, welcome back yet again to Rank and Review. I'm pretty sure you're still champion at this point. I mean, there's a couple episodes that need to be recorded ahead of this.
Yeah.
But statistically, it's very likely that you're still champion.
I still hold the throne. I'm very happy.
So I've been trying to get more disciplined about getting people to do proper episodes of R&R.
Yeah.
But I also want to sometimes reach outside of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
And,
And this is why we're here.
This is why we're here.
This is why we're here. Hold my hand.
We're going to talk about Blaxploitation.
Yep.
And I think all of these movies were released before 75. Like, they're like between 70 and 75.
I think so.
They're all 70s as hell anyway.
Yeah.
And they're all sort of riding a wave of, popularization of black culture and cinemas made by and for African American people.
Yeah.
Which is to say, not for me specifically, right?
Yeah.
I was born in 1976 in the middle of the Canadian prairies, and there were no black people there. Like in Edmonton, Alberta, in the 80s, if you saw a black person like at the mall or something like that, it would turn your head because it would just be, we don't see that very often. Right?
Okay.
I just grew up in a very white place. I'm saying that for all of the good and all of the bad that implies.
Okay.
Again, I had none of this registered to me. Like, none of this was anywhere. Even of the 70s movies that I watched growing up, I never really bumped into it. So it's completely left field to me, right?
Okay.
And outside of my knowledge base in a lot of ways. It would almost be like, again, I'm not trying to be dismissive, but like there was a resurgence of the classic musicals in the late 60s. Right?
Yep.
Musicals on film just don't do it for me. If I was to do an episode on those, I could say, well, I appreciate the historical significance of this Broadway play and why they would choose to adapt it, but my approach would be almost more analytical I find it hard to get passionate about these movies in a lot of ways. I'm going to just sort of open the door by saying, like, I wanted to like a lot of these movies more than I did.
Okay.
I didn't go in a hater. I really didn't.
No, I believe you. For the people at home, he seems to be really struggling.
Because, like, why am I not excited about Shaft? What's my problem with Shaft? I watched 3 Shaft movies this week, and it just like I found them to be kind of diminishing returns. I think that honestly, the other 3 movies that we talk about, I like significantly more than the Shaft, and I feel like I'm supposed to like these movies more than
Hey, man, this is your own thoughts, your own feelings. So let us open the floodgates.
I've said it before in the past with movies that are intensely personal to me.
Yes.
Just don't take my word for it. This movie either really pissed me off or this movie really touched my soul, so I can't talk reasonably about it. In this one I say maybe don't take my word for it because, again, I'm just outside of my element.
Okay.
And if you love Shaft, I apologize. And again, I'm not going to be throwing hate. This is not like, these movies suck. Like,
they just didn't do it for you.
They are not what I expected them to be, and that might have been part of my disappointment. And But anyway, we can get into that more specifically.
It would be like us doing an episode on the Twilight series. These movies are not made. They're not made for us.
Yeah.
We could easily rip them apart.
And we might have fun ripping them apart, but to what end?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Okay. I can see that.
So I found this more interesting than entertaining.
Well, it was me that was really pushing this, anyways. Let's be perfectly honest.
I mean, I get your interest. You love cinema, and marrying your interest with some African American cinema, black cinema, as it were, makes sense. You're married to an African woman. You're raising a daughter, and you want to be aware of the culture. So there's some more personal sort of levy to it. Mm-hmm. But again, I was sort of thinking about that in the background watching them because they're so specifically 70s. Like they're like Waka Chicka 70s. And again, that's fine. Like do you the 70s. But I don't know how relevant a lot of the stuff is. I mean, it's great. It would be great for the culture, I'm sure, at the time to have like a superhero with a black face that they can all.
And that's kind of what Shaft really is.
Yeah. And I think at its time, for its time, it was really. It's like the dude. He was fits right in there in his time and place. Yeah. But fast forward 40 years. Yeah. I say that, and there's a new Shaft movie evidently to be released. So, again, I must be full of shit. But was that your only reason for wanting to do Blaxploitation?
No, because I was sort of anticipating this question. I mean, I'd heard about these films as a kid, but, I never really was excited to see them. And then, I spent 2 years in Cape Town, South Africa, and they had this very posh DVD store in Cape Town, in the Cavendish area. Like it was a artsy, posh DVD store. It was very swanky, which specialized. You can get your nice, expensive coffee while browsing through It was an art house cinema store. Right.
Like DVD. We don't have here.
We
you can find it in South Africa, but not in Saskatchewan.
So they had very eclectic movies, and they had a Blaxploitation section, and I kind of thought, well, now's the time. Yeah. And they had the original sweet black badass song. Thank you. Yeah. They had copies of that, which I still haven't seen, ironically, since that's considered sort of the quintessential, the first one, if you will. But they had like Coffee, and they had Black Caesar. They had a long list of Blaxploitation films, and that's when I sort of first got into them. That's when I first saw at least the first Shaft, and some of these other titles that we're going to talk about today.
That could be part of the problem for me too. Sorry, I don't interrupt you, but access to the titles. I guess I wasn't. I didn't ever end up renting Shaft. That I remember. I seem to remember there was like a high school party where there was some Shaft and Blacula was playing. Yeah. But it was on in the room than I was really like into it. But I did not have the section of Blaxploitation cinema.
Yeah.
And maybe if I'd bumped into Blacula, I would have rented it just to check it out because it's a vampire movie, right?
Yeah.
But it would have been because it was a vampire movie, not because it was a Blaxploitation. But again, maybe it's because where we live, I barely even see these movies.
And part of it,
lack of exposure.
I think part of that's what it is to me as well. Like as you know, I grew up in a very leftist, social justice warrior breeding ground, if you will. So those themes have always intrigued me. You know, we talk politics a lot, you and I. And even though sometimes I it's pretty safe to say that our politics sometimes differ. It's always intrigued me. I always enjoy a sort of a social conscious theme with my movies, and these movies, they're not hiding it. It is part of their identity. It's part of their DNA. So what intrigued me about Blaxploitation is it came out as a response to a lot of the oppression that was going on. You have to remember that the 60s had just finished, or were still ongoing technically. And American film, I would say up until, still ongoing, was a huge visible response to a lot of social consciousness and social change. And so that's where part of these films come from, right or wrong. They do promote negative stereotypes, as we will talk about in these movies.
To quote the recently reviewed Office Space, I'm going to go ahead and disagree with you a little bit.
Okay.
I mean, obviously there were creative filmmakers and screenplay writers who wanted to get their voice and needed to get their voice out there.
Yeah.
What these movies did, especially Superfly and Shaft, because they were low-budget affairs, they made a fuck ton of money.
Oh, yes.
And then they were like, oh, we can make money
doing these?
Oh, okay. And then there was a wave of Blaxploitation.
Well,
I would love to say this was all altruism and they wanted to change the culture.
No.
For me, I honestly think they had a couple of strong hits and they thought, there's money here.
Well, yes. No, you're not wrong. If you even watch the documentary on Superfly, they talk about that.
Did they?
Where they said, like Sweet Sweet Badass Song came out and all of a sudden the studio soon realized, hey, we can make money, selling movies to black audiences. They have money. People go to see them in droves.
Yeah.
And it's like that movie really opened the door. Yes, there was a huge financial angle to this.
I just am sometimes resistant to the George Clooney fairy tale of Hollywood that all good change comes because somebody wrote a screenplay.
No, I'm not saying that, and I didn't want to say it was as simplified as that.
Right.
But no, part of this was, yes, absolutely. That film, an independent movie made by black artists or African American artists, made a lot of money, and that's how Shaft came about, really.
A fair ancillary would honestly be the 80s slasher craze, right?
Yeah.
A couple of late 70s slasher movies way fucking overperformed.
Yeah.
And then the industry just got inundated with it to the point that it drowned the interest in it. And it sort of tapered off.
Oh, no, I agree. If there was no financial success of Sweet Sweet Badass or even Shaft, none of this happens. Yeah. Even Superfly. Superfly made a lot of money. It's a very different movie in a lot of ways than the other five we're going to talk about. There's a huge financial component to it. Absolutely. Yes.
And I get it. There were good altruistic people who wanted to do that, but I honestly think in any industry...
I'm just talking about what drew me to these films. It was that there is a lot of social conscious or social issues being talked about in these movies from usually a African American point of view. Some of the writers, filmmakers, I kind of do a sort of turning eye and go, really? But that's one thing that attracted me to it. I try and consume as many different diverse voices as a lover of cinema. We're all about inclusion writer right now. And, and my mom challenged me on this. She said one day, I know you love film, but you see a lot of North American cinema. Why don't you watch, some Canadian cinema or some, Italian filmmakers? And that's something that, I try and do with my little cinematic obsessions is find genres that aren't strictly white and male anymore,
Right.
because there are different voices, and I may not agree with these voices, but that's one way that I can sort of consume it, hearing different voices, and same with literature.
I am all for different
yeah.
voices, but I think that when you get politically charged films, and what I like about these movies is
Yeah.
as political as they are, I'm disappointed that I don't like Shaft, but I don't feel like...
You shouldn't feel disappointed. You just didn't like the movie.
Yeah,
That's
but,
okay.
But I don't feel like I would be punished for not liking... It makes sense that it's not for me. Whereas, you're talking about The Piano, Jane Campion movie, right?
Yeah.
I don't like that movie.
Yeah.
And for some reason, that makes me sexist, I think. People will look down at me and like,
once again, that's sort of a simplistic, insulting.
But that, I'm supposed to like the piano and be charmed and respect the voice. And it's like, that did nothing for me. That did nothing for me.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. But it didn't.
Yeah.
But where was that one, I feel like I almost feel compelled to revisit and figure it out. Whereas these ones I can just sort of say, well, it's not for me. It's interesting for its time.
Okay.
And I can say that I've watched some blaxploitation cinema and not just be talking about this idea I have of it. Because that was my problem, I think, going in. I had an idea in my head of what blaxploitation cinema was, and it kind of didn't match what I watched.
Yeah, and I encourage anyone going into blaxploitation is don't go. Yes, there are tropes that we'll talk about, and there are stereotypes with it, but there's more than just these films and the messages they talk about. I love blaxploitation horror. I love it. And Get Out is a great example of that. But there was a horror movie talking about social injustice issues. Yeah. And black horror, there's a long line of blaxploitation horror, whether it's The Terror or Blackenstein or Ganja and Hess, Tales from the Hood. There's a whole subculture of these films that I encourage people who love movies, who love horror movies, go and check these out, because some of them are hilarious. Like Blackenstein is hilarious. Abby is awful. The Black Exorcist movie, woof.
Not to always go back to my boy Romero, but I think George Romero deserves shout-outs for him prominently placing African-American actors in a lot of his movies, and not, the best friend who dies in the third reel. Main character of Dawn of the Dead and Night of the Living Dead is a black guy, and not a lot is made of it.
Yeah. I like the truth about that is that Romero cast the best actor in the role. Ben was never supposed to be a specific color. In fact, he might have been white originally.
Well, that's what I like about these survival scenarios. It kind of makes all that shit disappear. If it's like, how are we going to eat today? Then it's less about the infighting. No. And you're talking about getting all the different angles of cinema. Like when I committed to Rank and Review 5 years and change ago, I think I committed to what I call genre cinema. Yes. Which to me is anything sort of fantastical.
Sure.
So, fantasy, science fiction, and horror.
Okay.
But in that umbrella, I will watch any fantasy, science fiction, horror, right? I'll watch Troll Hunter, I'll watch A Tale of Two Sisters. I'll watch any sort of iteration of that. And it's not that I've dismissed all the movies to the other side, but I watch way less Oscar bait movies in the last 5 years than I used to, I'm sort of specific to my own tastes. Yeah. Anyway, I got off the rails there. Is there anything else you want to say? An introduction? We're already 15 minutes in here before we start talking about these movies. I feel like I've done some. I've been making excuses for my.
Well, no, there are so many great blaxploitation films. I do, even though we'll be talking about again, shout out, go see Sweet, Sweet Badass Song. That even I haven't seen it, but apparently that's the quintessential one to get out there. But there's some other ones I do want to mention. Obviously, Get Out would be one. Black Devil Doll from Hell. Blackenstein. Abby is another one. And I'm sure I'm forgetting some. Anyways, these are some of the ones that I saw doing kind of like the homework and being just involved in blaxploitation films. Ganja and Hess is also considered a classic. The first Tales from the Hood is pretty good as well.
It's hard to get your hands on. I've actually been sort of keeping half an eye out for that, I feel like. And again, that's one that I missed that I feel like I should see. I like anthology horror movies, and it's got a decent reputation, so why haven't I seen Tales from the Hood?
Obviously, I'm a big fan, and you will hear it on Blacula. Not so much the sequel, but Yeah, I'm trying to think what else we got here. Gone Jen Hess, Abby, Sugar Hill. I loved Coffee.
So the Sugar Hill, the original one, it's like a zombie movie, right?
Yes, yeah.
And then the modern Sugar Hill just shares the title and nothing else?
Yeah, it's a gangster film.
Okay, weird. That's weird.
Yeah,
if you're going to remake a movie...
Yeah, Abby's messed.
Okay, well, I think maybe we should get into it.
Yes, we
I'm
should.
going to say, Lee's going to help me a little bit.
Yeah.
Full disclosure.
Is it Dr. Black, Mr. Hyde?
I watched all 3 Shafts in the last the last week or so, and they kind of blurred a little bit. They stewed in my head. I rewatched the Shaft in Africa, or a good portion of Shaft in Africa just yesterday to reorient me, because I knew that one was, I was having sensory issues. It was maybe too much too quick.
Sure.
So I might let Lee take point on some of the Shaft conversations.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, we should say what we're reviewing.
Exactly.
We're going to review Shaft.
Yep.
We're going to review Shaft's big score.
Yeah.
We're going to review Shaft in Africa.
The brother returns to the motherland.
We're going to review Superfly.
Yep.
We're going to review Cleopatra's Jones. And then
Cleopatra Jones.
Cleopatra Jones.
You said Cleopatra's Jones.
Oh, sorry.
Like the possessive.
Cleopatra Jones, and we're going to finish it off with Blacula.
Yeah.
Do it, boy.
Cats ain't gonna be here, he should be here.
Open it up.
Shaft's his name. Shaft's his game.
Listen, Snow White. Me and you gonna tangle sooner or later.
The mob wanted Harlem back. They got Shaft.
Okay, turn her loose so he goes.
Come on, in front of me. All I'm asking you is to let me know what's going on. No names, no places, just what?
Rated R. If you want to see Shaft, ask your mama.
So I think my problem was that I conflated my idea in my head of Shaft with Isaac Hayes.
Sure.
The voice of Chef from South Park, and the guy who provided the soundtrack and the famous song.
Okay.
Everybody knows the Shaft song.
Shaft!
It's unavoidable.
Yeah.
So that song paints a picture in my mind anyway of a very different movie.
Okay, so what were you expecting?
Well, he's
coming
a complicated
in...
man that no one understands but his woman.
Shut your mouth. What are you talking about?
I expected it to be over the top, kind of campy, and fun, sort of big 70s cinema.
Okay.
And this is a straight crime movie.
Sure, yeah.
I don't know. To me, it came advertised almost as like a cheesy, schlocky comedy or presentation, right? But that's not what it is at all.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't make it a bad movie. It just, my expectations were skewed for some reason. There was a movie, I can't remember the name of it, that was basically satirizing Blaxploitation movies, right? Where they just did it so over the top, where like the afros, they couldn't get through doors because of the size of the hair, and the costume starts to look more and more like Halloween things and stuff like this. So I just sort of figured that was an exaggerated version of Shaft, but Shaft, for all of its posturing with the suave super coolness of the Shaft character, is a pretty straight play one side against the other, intrigue in the mob, right? There's there's 3, I guess, factions that he needs to juggle here. There's the Black Mafia, the Black Nationalists, and the White Mafia.
The Italian Mafia,
yes. But they call them the White, whatever.
Yeah.
So there's... It's a little bit convoluted, but they're trying to start a race war, essentially. And first pitting the black gangs against each other, and then kidnapping the child of one of the leaders, Bumpy. Yeah. Moses Gunn plays the character. Yeah. So Shaft is at first in an adversarial position, and then figures if he can extinguish the fire by finding the kidnapper, saving this kid, he'll stop all-out war. Yeah. Which he does, and which he does confidently. Controversial statement number 1. Richard Roundtree. Yeah. Plenty of style, minimal acting prowess.
Yeah, that's not controversial.
Is that unfair?
No, that's not unfair. Richard Roundtree, at least from the evidence of Shaft.
He looks the part and he is suave, and like
he laughs a lot.
He's enjoying himself, and
Yeah.
he's a likable presence.
He's
But
a-
is he a good actor?
No.
Is he a
No,
good
he's
actor?
not. I don't think he'll ever be accused of taking home the Emmy or the Oscar. No, he's at best he's a character actor.
You love what you do. You
Yeah,
know.
but you know, he is John Shaft. You know, he's playing a sort of a cocky version of himself. So yeah, no, not a great actor, Richard Roundtree. I think if anything, when I first think of Shaft, we're 1 year removed from The French Connection winning Best Picture. And that film, I think, changed a lot of things because audience members weren't used to, at least with mainstream film, the sort of tough, gritty 70s crime, authentic drama where the good guys were saying the N-word and it was tough, and we were seeing addicts in the street vomiting and whatnot. Like,
also, the movies would stop talking down to us.
Yeah.
There was a real problem, I find, in the 60s and early 70s
Yeah.
with them re-explaining and over-explaining the machinations of the plot, like not giving the audience enough credit to understand A plus B equals C. And that, I think, The French Connection kind of slammed the door on a little.
well, yeah, Friedkin talked about, you know, when that film first premiered and he knew he had a hit, you know, there was audible gasps with the opening sequences where our two hero cops were saying some pretty vile things, beating up suspects. But Friedkin said, I wanted authenticity.
Yeah.
And that's what he said to screenwriter Ernest, I hope I'm saying his name, Tiedemann. It's Tyderman.
Sounds right. Tiedemann.
Tiedemann.
Let's say.
You know, I wanted this tough, gritty, authentic, what's life, you know, in New York City really, really like, and let's give it to the mass audiences. And so Shaft is, you know, it's another level of that. Is we're going to show,
screenwriter.
Same screenwriter. We're going to show a tough crime thriller where it's gritty, but our hero, originally John Shaft was supposed to be white.
Yeah.
When they sold it to MGM, then it became, hey, we got to get on this wave. And what happens if we make John Shaft an African American? And then it took on a life of its own. And the original novel got published with Shaft being an African American dick, if you will, who says smart aleck things to the man, beds the woman, solves the crime.
Yeah.
You're up to here with Shaft.
And here's where we come into it, the blaxploitation sort of approach to it.
Okay.
At the time, like nowadays, I think that what, it sounds so condescending. I know what black audiences want, but like, it wouldn't be like if they Denzel Washington made a movie where he's a lawyer.
Yeah.
The key to his being a lawyer wouldn't be his blackness. He would just be Denzel Washington, and he'd be an amazing fucking lawyer, right?
Yeah, yeah.
There's something about these movies where part of what makes Shaft so awesome is that he's African American. And like now that would almost feel condescending to me. Like I don't know how well that reads now. It would just be he's a super cop. He's an amazing cop. It'd be Bad Boys, right?
Okay, but we're in an age right now where representation is a very real thing. Inclusion.
But I said Bad Boys for a very specific reason.
Mm-hmm.
Like those Bad Boy movies, they shoot Will Smith like he's a fucking supermodel, right?
Yeah.
I see Shaft influences there, right?
Yeah.
It's not that he's black that makes him a super cop. He's a super cop because he's an amazing police officer, right?
Yeah.
But that's the subtle difference between, I think, early blaxploitation and where we've come off. It's just like, no, he's a successful person. It's not because he's black. It's that he's able to thrive in an environment that sets the stakes against him at every turn, right?
Yeah.
So there's just something interesting that I sort of feel about all of these movies.
Okay.
And I do want to talk about some of the staples.
Sure.
In a way, this movie, Shaft, is less guilty of them than some of the others as we go moving forward.
Yeah.
But everything will stop for a music number.
Yep. They love their 60s, 70s funk along with the big styles, disco styles.
And I don't know if it's part of the fashion sort of chic thing or whatever, but the movies have a lot of air in them. There's a lot of people driving in their awesome cars going from point A to point B. Yeah. And there's a lot of getting to know you conversations. Speaking as a filmmaker, as a film editor, I know that the 70s were a different time and they would let their movies breathe and the audiences were more receptive to them. Yeah. For me, as an editor, I would be like, and then he drives to the car, and then the car pulls into the driveway, and then he turns off the car, and then he sits in the front seat of the car for a second,
and then the camera does a close up, right?
Slowly closes in, and I'm like, no, you cut this. Cut to the interior. He's home, right?
Yeah.
And again, I don't know why I was progressively so as I was watching more and more of them, as these would come up, and they come up in all of these movies. I would be like, get to the next scene, please.
Superfly is terrible for that. There's lots of long shots in that big nice car of his.
Yet when we get to it, it's one of the ones where it bothered me the least.
Yeah.
So this movie is guilty of it, but all of the movies we're talking about,
even the opening title sequence, it's just a long walk of Shaft as he goes through traffic and tells one guy up.
Yeah, and you listen to a lot of music, and again, I think that's the difference in Superfly. I actually kind of got into the Pusher Man song, and really, some of the music I actually clicked with more, whereas this is more incidental background Waka Chicka 70s music, which is fine, and they obviously focus the Isaac Hayes song, but again, I feel like the song is advertising a different movie somehow to me. I'm harder on the movie than maybe I should be, but to me, at the end, it's a very familiar premise.
Yeah,
it's a 70s crime drama.
It's an Elmore Leonard-esque Mickey Spillane.
The thing is, the 70s was the time where they were making these movies amazingly all of the time. Yeah, and in that crop of movies, I don't know how much Shaft sort of stands out from the crowd for me. Its significance as an important piece of black cinema, absolutely. As a great piece of, enthralling police or cop intrigue, I don't know. But
it's now in the National Congress Library of Cinema, so.
And I'm sure it's there for good reason. I don't mean to talk down to Shaft. It's
it
didn't connect for me.
As a film itself, I think time has not been kind to it, just structurally. But I enjoyed Shaft for what it is. I mean, it's a Mickey Spillane film noir story right off the bat. Never really pretends to be more than that. Once again, I think for audiences that maybe had not seen themselves represented.
Absolutely.
That wasn't a racist Uncle Tom stereotype. No. Here it was. It was funny to see, a good-looking African-American man, telling the white police chief, "I'll get to you sometime." Mm-hmm. And even so, the race baiting that goes on in Shaft, I'm sure a lot of people were like, "Yeah." Same thing with Superfly.
I was actually impressed at. Well, maybe impressed is the wrong word, but with a lot of the movies here, including Shaft, that it's not even about punching out the white guy or defeating him conclusively. No. It's just about being able to say "fuck you" to his face. Like, that's enough at this point, right? He doesn't have to put the cuffs on him. He doesn't defeat racism, right? Yeah. He's just somehow shafted his way above it.
Yeah. I don't even think he wants to stop the so-called race war that's trying to be ignited here. He just wants to find the girl, and the police chief at the end of the movie says, "Okay, Shaft, you have to clean up your mess." And Shaft goes, my whole goal was about getting the girl. It's your job to clean up this so-called race war that's about to erupt. And he hangs up the phone.
That might be one of the problems I have with Shaft. He's so cool that he doesn't even want to be altruistic and good. I kind of wanted him to be a good guy, but cool and style trumps everything. Getting laid and looking cool is more important than catching the bad guy.
I think that's what was sort of Shaft.
That's
all
John
on.
Shaft.
That's John Shaft. Yeah.
I've also, and I've talked about this with you, have this problem with the Riddicks and the Blades and the Snake Plissken sort of hero, where on some level I believe they've read the script and they know how this is all going to work out, and they're never afraid. It kills the stakes for me in those movies, and to a degree in Shaft as well. Yeah. I think we'll find as we go forward, each movie gets a little bit bigger and a little bit dumber, like I said.
Okay.
But they're just sort of playing on a bigger scale.
Yeah, well, to me, I have no problems with these films, but I agree with you. The hero's never in real danger, and Shaft even acts like it, especially in this one, where he knows that he's going to come out all right. But it's about the journey. It's not about the ending. It's about, to me, the sauce, the supporting characters from, Bumpy Johnson or whomever. Yeah. The supporting cast has always been sort of intriguing as well. Our villains, or our dirty other little film noir character types. I love the 70s style. I love the lighting. I love the use of shadow, but in this movie, not so much in Shaft in Africa because the color palette is different.
Changed, yeah.
But that sort of gritty 70s New York, I like looking at as well. That style. So that's something else that intrigued me about Shaft. Once in a while, I love some of the wordplay. Not so much with this one, but more in the second one where he gets a little more, sass to him.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's the whole stereotypes. Like, this is the kind of movie that David Duke would wake up from a nightmare from, where, John Shaft is bedding all the ladies. So, it is what it is. It's a crime thriller that was of its time. I liked it for what it is.
Again, sometimes the wrong movie hits you on the wrong day, but it confuses me because I'll make excuses for movies like Tourist Trap or whatever against slasher movies. I like slasher movies, and I'll say, so here's another one.
Yeah.
Right? I think maybe part of it is, like I said, the 70s were the age of movies of like Gritty Street, Dog Day Afternoon, French Connection, Serpico, like that's when they made those movies their best. Yeah. And I think I've seen the classics of the genre and recognize that this is of that age. Yeah. But maybe not punch in the same way. Mm-hmm. But it's weird to me, that I'm not making excuses. Yeah, it was if this sounds like something you'll be into, it'll be something you'll be into. Again, for me, when we talk about Superfly and Cleopatra Jones, that's kind of what I wanted out of Shaft. And is it fair for me to admonish a movie because it's not what I wanted it to be? Not really. Yeah. But is there anything else you want to say about Shaft?
No, I will just once again I want to quickly talk about the influence of Sweet Sweet. That's a movie that was independently made and it came out and it changed everything. Like, that's when Hollywood kind of took notice and went, same thing when Blair Witch came out. It was made up by an independent filmmakers and it grew big. Same thing with that song. They soon realized that, they were making a lot of money. A lot of people came to that movie because they saw some of their lives put up on the screen. And that's kind of where Shaft was going to go.
Yeah, they're hungry for representation.
Yeah.
I think that a similar thing, maybe culturally, might have happened with Crazy Rich Asians this summer.
Yeah.
Because they expected it to be a hit, but it was like a crazy hit.
Yeah.
And it was like, there's an audience that's been hungry for representation, and they haven't been getting it. Yeah. And guess what?
Well, on North American soil,
yeah. And if you, exactly. Yeah. And if you give it to them, watch them show up.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, that's all about it I can say about Shaft. The great Gordon Parks made this movie. You'll see his name come up and also a family connection later. I would check out some of his other works as well. He was a pretty good writer. And also Ernest Tidyman. He's the guy that co-wrote or wrote the screenplay for The French Connection. He also did the Shaft novels and did the screenplays for the Shaft films. I find his work, from what I've read and seen, pretty cool. But yeah, no, Shaft is Shaft, man. Nobody understands him really. But his woman. Mm-hmm.
You liked him before, so he's back with more. Shaft. Shaft is back. In Shaft's big score.
He looks like Cal Asby to me.
What's left of him.
What did he tell you, Shaft?
Stay away from black hunkies with big, flat feet.
Last time he was nice. This time he's ice.
We go to a lot of funerals, Shaft. Willie and me. One day we'll drop in on yours.
Shaft is back in action with Bumpy and Willie and a new box or two.
Why don't you take your things off? Hey, wait a minute. I didn't mean all that.
You beat the hell out of Queens.
What do you want from me, Shaft?
Okay, Shaft's big score.
Yep.
1 year almost to the day.
Yep.
It is released at theaters. They're cranking them out pretty quick. But that said, they seem to have pretty firm feet on the ground. They know what worked for them in Shaft. It was a hit, and all they're doing is throwing a little bit more money at it. I mean, in this Shaft, we have a boat chase and a helicopter flying through a warehouse and some pretty cool, real in-camera...
Using Panavision cameras this time,
Yeah. The production's gone up a couple of notches. So the Shaft is looking cooler and more badass than ever.
Yeah.
So we catch up with Shaft. He's in bed with a beautiful lady, and the phone rings, and a buddy of his calls, and he's got a job for him. But he's got to talk to Shaft right now. Yeah. And he wants to make sure that his sister is safe, and Shaft assures him his sister is safe. And he goes to meet his buddy, and his buddy has been exploded. Yeah. And John Shaft has to get to the bottom of this case. Yep. Yeah, so begins Shaft's big score. Yeah. As I sort of described, I think each movie gets a little bit bigger and maybe a little bit dumber. Yeah. In its trajectory. Yeah. I don't think that anything happened at any point in Shaft's big score that I was like, what? Yeah. Like for all its stupidity, like Cleopatra Jones, I was kind of surprised by one turn of the plot. So I give the movie points for that. Yeah. Again, this is a 70s cop thriller. It's everything you expect to, like with the
it's a Philip Marlowe,
I will give it this. I laughed out loud a couple of times during the movie, but maybe not when I was supposed to. Okay. Some of the fight sequences are kind of handled in a weird, awkward way. Yeah. And it's not just that I don't believe the blows, but it's this sort of self-congratulatory that Shaft does a few times after he defeats his opponent. It kind of made me chortle, and not because it was awesome. Yeah. And there's a hilarious sequence when one of the big bads takes a fall off of this walkway, and this clear dummy is like doing this end over end fall and just lands like a piece of hardwood on the pavement at the bottom, and it's so not convincing as to be kind of airplane-esque amusing. Yes. Yeah. But I got some joy out of that. Yeah. But again, those weren't intentional pieces of joy. In those places, I came close to laughing at the movie instead of with it, which is not good, I guess. It's fine. I find myself going back to this.
You need to stop feeling guilty, man.
But no, I mean generally with movies, too many of my reviews end with, it's fine. Yeah. But that's kind of where I'm at with Shaft's big score.
I think it's
fine.
Yeah. I think it's hard creating a mythical, superhero kind of character. It was not quite getting into the James Bond category. We'll talk about that with the next one. But, at this point they wanted to make this enduring hero archetype.
Franchise it. Oh yeah.
Yeah. And you could see that with Shaft's big score. A man who smiles a lot and walks between the lines between the police force and the mob in the big city and any other sort of criminal underworld who just keeps on walking and smiling and taking punches and saving dames, if you will.
And this seems less about rubbing it in Whitey's face, and more about,
there is less race baiting with this movie.
It's more about being a straight action movie, and I know that stuff doesn't really bother me. I understand why it's there, but this movie seems to be focusing on let's make this a big action piece. Again, I'm gonna beat up on Roundtree again. There's there are a few moments where he's supposed to emote and give a shit. Yeah. And they're actually trying to give dimension to Shaft. And I don't know if he's up for the task.
It's the Jean-Claude Van Damme world of acting.
No!
not even the no. But the whole thinking, it's like,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, this is thoughtful.
Yeah. Okay, Richard, we need you to be thinking about something. I want a taco. Look, once again, Roundtree's never been known as an amazing actor. I do love the supporting cast in this movie. I think, once again, it's all about the journey and soaking up that kind of style. I'm going to give a shout out to both Moses Gunn, who is
Bumpy's back,
but also Wally Taylor. He's sort of one of our main antagonists. He's the one that is running around the whole movie trying to keep his evil scheme together. And I never really felt bad for him.
But there were stakes for him.
Yeah. Yeah, like you could tell that he was always hanging by a thread. And then when he finally gets his comeuppances, you're just like, you're out of your misery more than anything else.
Yeah. But in that way, he kind of had more dimension than Shaft.
Yeah.
Shaft is never that way. Shaft is never on his heels. He's never, like, worried.
He's kind of the glue of the whole movie, and if you stop and you think about it.
He gets shot in the shoulder, and it's like, what is it?
Yeah.
And again, Bruce Willis in Die Hard would do the same shit,
Yeah.
but there's just something like, even though he takes a bullet, he's bulletproof.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of wonder if actually Wally Taylor has more screen time than John Shaft himself, because we do follow him quite a bit through the movie, and him trying to juggle all these balls, even when he's trying to go to another gangster saying, hey, you know, Shaft is coming and he's coming for you. He's being sort of Machiavellian with his schemes. I found his story actually a little more compelling than Shaft figuring everything out in a lot of ways.
We certainly did spend a lot of time following him around the city.
Yeah.
And again, those driving shots.
Okay, I mean, driving shots, yeah, fine, whatever. One thing I forgot to mention when talking about the original Shaft, Isaac Hayes' score, not just the quintessential song, but the music in the original Shaft is so good. You can tell it's kind of missing here. He comes back for like 1 or 2 songs, but the score throughout the movie itself just didn't quite do it for me. So I missed that with this next movie.
I'm at war with it, and this happens quite a bit through all the movies, but we're talking about it now, so let's talk about it now.
Sure.
The sort of big band 70s score,
Yeah.
a lot of horns, a lot of
Yeah.
percussion. It's really cool, and I think it was highly popular club music at the time.
Yeah.
But not always appropriate for what we're seeing.
Okay.
It'll be like they're trying to raise tension, but instead we're getting this sort of brass dance number, and it's not helping the stakes.
Yeah.
I find usually the score is telling you the emotional temperament of the movie, and that's not always the case in these movies. Sometimes they're just playing funk because they're playing funk, you know?
Yeah,
Like, he's meeting some guy in a seedy back alley. Maybe we'd be establishing some mood. No? I mean, then if some, maybe the idea is if violence suddenly erupts, it's more surprising. But it's weird because typically I find the music is there to help the story or help tell you what's happening.
Yeah.
And this sort of seems like they bought a bunch of music and they got the movie and they just poured it on top of it. Sometimes it helped, sometimes it hindered, but it was always there.
Yeah, and the fight scenes are comedic. We haven't learned, or American cinema hadn't really learned a lot of beautiful stage craft fighting, and you can tell there. I call it the Star Trek time of fighting.
Yes,
where
very much
Kirk fights where he comes up, he's got his hands. You're not seeing this at home, but imagine having your hands up like you're praying, like above your head, and he punches into his back. And the other actor's like, doing this big over dramatic top.
You've shattered my rib cage.
Yeah, and the punches, like the sound is over the top, and their face is like. Whoa.
Part of it is, you're right, the time it came out in, like and the other part is we are spoiled by the action that we've been getting in the last. There's been a real renaissance in crazy action in the last few years. We're getting movies like Dread and The Raid and the John Wick series, and so like. After you've seen those, to watch these fight sequences, it becomes like, oh, this is what children do when they pretend to fight on a schoolyard. It is not credible.
Yeah, but once again, I would dare you to look at the original Paramount Star Trek films, and it's the same way.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you have to sort of know that you're what time you're watching the movie, and you'll either go with it or you won't. Right?
Yeah.
So I think people they'll know what we're talking about.
Yeah. I do enjoy Shaft's wordplay a lot more in this film. There's a line. Well, there's a scene involving. He's trying to get out of the building with the kind of weird elevator chase sequence, and there's that old lady that comes up and talking about profanity. I thought that was kind of amusing. But also, there's a scene where Shaft is meeting the mobsters, and he walks past one of the evil henchmen and says, "You really need to go see a doctor about that condition." And the guy goes, "What condition?" And he says, "Well, your air hole is too close to your mouth." Yeah. Things like that made me laugh. Like that's tidyman right there to me. So yeah, as you can maybe tell, I'm a little more liking Shaft's big score than I think you. But once again, it's the tropes as well, the long sequences of the sort of 70s.
I don't want to come off like I hate it. Like I said, it's fine for what it is for the time it came out. Again,
like, but they're trying to establish a black superhero, if anything.
We'll talk about it more in the next movie, but I think we should touch on it here because we did it in the first movie.
Yeah.
We'll bump into it again and again in other movies, but the movie's so well intentioned in that it's trying to give the black community a superhero.
Yeah.
The treatment of women. By Shaft.
Yeah.
Is a backward step, right? And we'll see in both Blacula and in Superfly and in Cleopatra Jones the portrayal of homosexuals. They're vilified largely,
or hugely negatively stereotyped.
It's just interesting, like this one step forward, two step backs. Like, Shaft is the coolest person who's ever been on screen, but he treats women like Kleenex, right? He does.
Prideful,
but we're not bothered by James Bond doing that, right? So why should we be bothered by Shaft doing that?
Yeah.
But, I'm just talking about, like, when in the opening we were talking about Hollywood's altruistic intentions. One of the reasons I question that, right? Like, if they were altruistic, maybe they would be even-handed in their portrayal of all of them. But no, this movie's about black power. So black power and fuck everything else, right?
Yeah.
So, but again, I think that Shaft's big score is less interested in that aspect to its benefit.
Yeah.
It's just, it's a little bit hindered by the time it came out. And also just by the time it came out, with some of the things that people say casually in this movie.
Yeah.
Hit our ears pretty hard.
Yeah. If you're gonna have a problem hearing the N-word, woo.
Yeah, nigger, bitches, faggot, like all of these things that at the time were said at the dinner table, right? Nobody questioned. Like, I'm not even talking about. There's a few times where they're actively used, to call out a character, but even just casually, some of the stuff that comes out of people's mouths is pretty surprising. You realize, well, culturally, we actually have moved quite a bit forward.
And I would say quickly.
Yeah.
Like this, we were alive during the 70s. Maybe not when this movie first came out.
I came out in 76. I think all of these movies beat me to the punch, but not by much.
No, but I think how quickly things have changed in that regard.
Yeah.
Where in this day and age, we have to be very careful, even as white people, as white men, saying that word in public.
What I talk about on my podcast sometimes, like some imaginary thing's gonna come and swat me and say you're not allowed to say these things. But I mean, at that point, it's just inhibiting conversation. But yes, I've said it many times on the podcast. I talked about it in our satire episode. I don't think movies like Blazing Saddles or Heathers or The Life of Brian could get greenlit today, and that's horrifying to me. Right?
Yeah.
Like, I think that you got to be able to tell the truth, and being able to tell the truth sometimes means saying stuff that's going to make people uncomfortable.
In order to think and solve problems, you need to run the risk of offending people.
Yeah. So, and again, the interesting thing about this stuff is that, much like with Blazing Saddles, the stuff that made a big noise when it came out is sort of not as big a deal today. It's more just the shock of just the general treatment of the women throughout the movie, or the casual use of the word faggot, or the casual use of, like, that stuff. It seems like, holy shit.
Yeah, like, whoa.
And to the movie's benefit, it's not trying to ring any bells about this stuff. It's just an authentic reflection of its time.
Yeah.
But it's funny that some people will be offended by that authentic representation of the time.
Yeah. Yep. No.
Is there anything else you want to say about Shaft's Big
Score?
Score?
No. I'd say check out Shaft's Big Score. It's your typical 1970s action crime thriller. Check it out, personally.
Shaft, tracking down a ring of 20th century slave runners across 2 continents.
Listen, if Shaft is still breathing by this time tomorrow, I'll have you killed.
Why don't you really clamp down on the slave trade? I'll tell you why. Because the black ghettos of Paris is as far away from the Champs-Élysées as 125th Street is from Park Avenue.
From the Sin towns of the Ivory Coast.
You know who I am, don't you? Who told you? Who? Talk!
To a slave ship on the Red Sea.
All right, gentlemen. Everyone into the hold. Go on, move it.
The biggest shaft of all. In the hottest place of all. Shaft in Africa.
Shaft in Africa.
Yep.
Here's where we full on elevate Shaft, where his awesomeness is just too big for like cops and robbers or gangster bullshit. He's gonna go out and out full on James Bond for this movie.
Notice that his pad or his place that keeps on getting like more expensive, richer with each film as well.
And they also don't really fully ever explain what he does. They do the same thing with Cleopatra Jones.
Yeah.
It's just like she can do whatever she wants, whenever she wants, wherever she wants. Like she's got her jurisdiction is fucking the planet Earth.
Yeah. She walks between the raindrops. We get it, John Shaft.
But he's being asked to go undercover to break up this European slave running outfit. A bunch of French intellectuals are basically shipping and selling slave labor to Paris. And so because it's going on a more global scale and because it's taking on the tough issue of slavery dead on, you'd think that, you know, this would be the tougher, smarter Shaft. Unfortunately, it is not. It is clearly the dumbest of the three Shaft movies. His behavior as an undercover agent, I say making air quotes, is like, and again, I can't, in this case, I'm not even going to put it all on Roundtree. Like on a script level, this guy does not know how to be undercover. He does not and again, the stakes should be life and death. And like these people's fate, not just his fate, but like all of these would-be slaves. Like, we should be taking this pretty fucking seriously, and we are not.
Yeah, he kind of makes some real questionable decisions. I don't want to get too close to the end, but one of his female counterparts that he obviously beds at one point, I kind of turned a little bit how he treats her. Even after she's killed, he just kind of puts her on a boat and out to sea. And I'm just like, oh, dude.
The treatment of women, I guess, is consistent. But there's something almost Orwellian about it. Whereas, like I said, Shaft treats women like Kleenex for all of the movies. But in this movie, it's not enough that they're treated like Kleenex. They want Shaft so bad. Like, it's their raison d'etre is to make love to Shaft just once and be discarded by him, right? Like,
I've never been made love like that by a real man.
To give in.
That's cool, baby.
It's not enough to give in to your Orwellian overlords. You have to thank them, right? So that rubbed me the wrong way, and it really escalates the nudity as each movie has. In the first Shaft movie, it's kind of arty.
Well, it is an exploitation film,
and then the second movie, there's a couple ladies with their boobs out. This movie is like full on 70s push going on. Like there's like nakedness all over the place, whether it needs it or not. And then there's the test that Shaft's asked to go through to prove that he would be a worthy applicant for this. Very strange, uncomfortable stuff. And again, if it was taking it as seriously as the first movie did, this would be maybe a pretty gritty, punchy thriller. But because, again, everything is put aside except for the style and how cool John Shaft is, this is the closest it came to being a little bit distasteful to me. I can laugh at it, and again, I found the whole relationship with that woman who's desperate to shag him, finally gets to have sex with him after she tells him basically the entire plan. And once she's A, given out all the information that she's needed, and B, had sex with Shaft, her character has no further use, so she is immediately killed off. And like you say, Shaft sets her to sea in a boat and forgets that she ever existed. But like,
even tells her father.
It was so tuneless and wrong-footed that like it almost became funny. Like, if I thought they were making a statement on it, I would say bravo, but they were not making they were not making a statement on it. They were blissfully unaware of how tactless that was. And again, that rubs me a little bit the wrong way. And again, it's less prisoner of the stylist conceits that we're going to talk about again as far as following Shaft as he drives across the city. We didn't have to deal with that as much. And to its credit, it gave some the best stakes for Shaft. Like when the apartment fire happens in the third act, and like most of the slavers that he's traveled with and been with are killed, like burned alive.
Yeah,
there's some genuine. That sucks too. Like they're it's as close to a real emotion as I felt maybe in the entire trilogy. Like those people died, and if Shaft was more on point, maybe that wouldn't have happened, right?
Yeah.
So then the final shootout when he's murdering these evil French European guys, you know, there's little bit of stakes and a little bit of punch there.
Believe it or not, I think from a technical standpoint, this movie's is probably the most polished out of all of them. The director has changed this time. It's John Guillermin when it's not Gordon Parks. The fight sequences are a little better. We've got some great fight sequences with some staff, which sort of replaces the long-winded punches that we've seen in the earlier films. So I do think there's a greater focus on some of the fight sequences, the chase sequences. Obviously, we've got a bigger mat to play with both Africa, I think Egypt, shows up, as well as France and New York, Brooklyn.
Again, once again, they've raised the game playing field on every level.
Hollywood for years, especially the makers of James Bond, have been threatening to make a different James Bond. They've been dabbling out for a while now that they might have an African American James Bond just to test the waters. I say that's already been done. Exhibit A, we have Shaft in Africa.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes,
this is James Bond Shaft.
They
even make a reference, I believe, directly in the movie.
Yeah.
He says, "No, I'm not James Bond. I'm Sam Spade."
Yeah,
something like that.
Yeah. More than once, actually.
Yeah, I hope I didn't misquote it.
Yeah, no, this is a James Bond film.
Yeah,
they decided to change it up completely. I think they decided to embrace a lot more of what an exploitation movie was. We have an increased amount of nudity. I think we have an increased amount of violence and blood, to be perfectly honest. So they are embracing that more schlocky angle of it.
And I think you're allowed to elevate the sexuality and the violence, especially when you're playing in the Bond field.
Yeah.
But I do think that if we're okay with Shaft doing everything he does in the same way we'd be okay with James Bond doing everything he does, except for his callous disregard of the slave traders. Like he actually, when he gets to Africa, they say, "Your cover's been blown, so we'll understand if you don't want to do this." And he's like, "I've got 100 G. So I'm being paid to be here.
25,000,
or whatever.
Yeah, but a lot of money at the time.
And then they said, "Well, this is all about the money." And he said, "Yeah, and maybe getting my picture taken with a lion."
Yeah.
But again, these people who were being sold as slaves. Again,
I think his arc changes when he gets back to France, though.
And maybe and with the fire, but by that time he's lived with them for this long, and he's seen all that they've been going through.
Yeah.
And again, I'm so sorry, Mr. Roundtree. Perhaps an actor who with a little bit more depth would have read as he wasn't taking it seriously at the beginning, but there was a reason for it, so we could see this slow turn in his character.
Yeah.
I didn't see that slow turn in his character.
This is what I would call sort of a social justice revenge fantasy, where a group long oppressed is finally getting back at their oppressors.
Great.
Inglourious Bastards is
Django.
Or Django and Jane is exhibit A and B of these kind of films, and that's fine. They're ridiculous in a lot of things. Both those films, all three of those films.
But imagine Django Unchained if Django was indifferent to the slavery.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a case for him in the beginning, yes. Yeah. But the whole theme is, the biggest, baddest brother in town is going back to the motherland.
He's too busy being John Shaft to think too deeply about it, I guess.
I think the journey changes him, though.
In its defense, a James Bond movie would never touch on the subject.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
James Bond, there will always be a clear black hat, a clear white hat, and we're not going to worry about it. So it's a more complex layer. And again, we would take it more seriously today, obviously, than they were willing to take it in 73.
Yeah. I love the opening hero shot he gets with the music. Once again, it's there's the familiar Shaft music. Bum ba dum ba. Sees a bunch of thieves trying to jack his car, and he goes after him.
I did want to talk a little bit about the fighting too.
Okay,
sure. The staff fighting, I kind of get the sort of rite of passage tribal thing.
Yeah.
They were kidnapping tribal people, and they could make the line about Shaft being good with the stick. There's a scene towards the end of the movie where one of the imprisoned black people gets their hand on a spear and chucks it into the back of one of the main villains. And it's uncomfortable to me how on the nose that was. You know what I mean?
This movie is not subtle.
And again, maybe like that just wouldn't happen if it was today. Maybe it's just because I'm looking at it through the lens of 2019. But that seemed so tunelessly on the nose that he threw a spear into that guy's back that I was just like, seriously?
Dude.
Are you trying to make me uncomfortable? This is turning into Curb Your Enthusiasm right now. I feel uncomfortable watching this.
Yeah, no, I know. Some of the stereotypes that I'm sure were deemed sort of at least, you know, chuckle-worthy are in this stage. Ooh, really?
It reminds me of when I reviewed Lifeboat, the Ron Canada actor, the one black character on the boat, and he's got some screen time and he's like a sympathetic character, but the thing that he's good at is picking pockets. And how unfortunate that it was like the one black character is like his skill is picking. It's sort of like stuff like that. And again, but at this point, Lifeboat would have almost been 25 years old, right? So I kind of thought we'd maybe come forward a little bit past that point. I would like, again, I'm such an okey doke white person. I'm like the white guy who claps when the plane lands, okay? So, like, maybe I should not take offense on behalf of other people, but I could, in my head, in my head, I can imagine, somebody maybe taking offense to some of the blasé approach to slavery.
Well, and that's, what's the word I'm looking for here? That's the sort of oxymoron or the good and bad of films like these, where, Spike Lee had a term for it. I'm going to use it in this context here, and I apologize for the people at home. Coonery buffoonery. I'm using a quote by Spike Lee, where there's an element of that with these movies, where I think racial stereotypes are played up, which is why I always sort of look at who are the people making and writing this movie. Are they perpetuating a stereotype? I didn't notice it as much in the first two, but here in Shaft in Africa, I started to notice it. Cleopatra Jones is kind of bad for it as well, where I kind of wondered, is this a white artist or writer writing what he thinks African Americans speak like in 1970s urban America? I don't know. Once again, I'm not African American. I was but a babe in '76, so I don't know. But it's one of those thoughts that kind of danced in my head, where I get it's supposed to be a pro African American rah-rah movie, but at the same time you're perpetuating negative stereotypes that today people would be like pointing a finger going, ugh.
And again, I understand the evil white corrupt cop. Absolutely, that's a necessary character in these movies as far as I'm concerned. That's not going to offend me. But if you're going to tackle something as serious as slave trading, I think you should take it more seriously than Shaft in Africa does.
Oh, absolutely. I think even the filmmakers of Shaft in Africa would say that.
Right.
I think they made out to make a sort of James Bond-esque movie with a black lead character at the end of the day. I think that's what they were going for. I don't think they were going for any huge political statement on slavery.
Black James Bond was as deep as they thought about it.
Yeah.
And, so I guess if that's what you go into the movie expecting, like a Sean Connery era Bond, only with John Shaft in the lead, you're going to get that here, and it's going to be a little bit more violent, a little more sexual than you're going to expect. But again, it continues what for me was a disappointing sort of line of diminishing returns for Shaft.
I want to do a shout out to character actor Frank McRae, but also Frank Finlay, who is a British actor.
Amafi.
Amafi, yes. Frank Finlay, for people at home who are big movie nerds, might know him from the movie Life Force. He played the sort of Abraham Van Helsing character.
Right.
He popped up and it was like, hey, it's that guy. But also McRae I've seen before many, many times. That's one thing I like about seeing these movies is you see character actors that you have seen before. There's also one in Shaft's big score. Shaft's one of the criminal buddies is also in Blazing Saddles. I saw, and I forget his name right now, but it was like, oh, I've seen him before. So it's neat to see them in other work. But it was I thought even though it's very much a character type, the Frank Finley character, Amafi. Shout out to him. Look, this movie is silly. Silly. It's a James Bond movie.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Do not take it seriously, because if you take it seriously, it's offensive. So
a little bit.
So just take it for the time it came in, and it's like.
But it made me. Yeah, but it did make me smile, and all its stereotypes, if you will.
Yeah.
I can understand why people would be offended with this movie, but at the same time, I think you have to embrace what the climate was at the time.
Yeah.
And this is just escapist, social justice, revenge fantasy.
Yeah.
Tarantino sure loves this. I wouldn't be surprised if this is his favorite Shaft movie. But I'm just guessing here. Shaft in Africa.
This dude is bad. And he ain't just fly. He's Superfly. Yeah, Superfly. When it comes to women, they come to him. But it's still not enough. He wants a big score. $1 million in cash. Yeah, the big one.
This is a chance, and I want to take it. Now. Before I have to kill somebody. Before somebody ices me.
What kind of money are we talking about?
Not much.
I want his ass out working.
Okay, so Superfly.
Yep.
1972. This would have come out right smack in the middle of the Shaft trilogy.
Year after Shaft, yeah.
Yeah. Here's why I think it's head and shoulders better than any of the Shaft movies.
Sure.
The character, even though he's hyper stylized and super cool and beautiful and hip with all the ladies or whatever.
One of the best drug dealing names ever in
Priest.
cinematic. Youngblood.
Yeah.
Priest Youngblood.
He feels more real world to me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not that he's a black man who deals drugs. It's that it's a familiar construct.
Mm-hmm.
The Carlito's Way journey, somebody who spent their life doing ill and wants to get out, but finds that they can't. And also find that their only solution to getting out is doing the same thing that they've done all the time. That sort of schizophrenic psychology that is, my life has been destroyed by drugs, but if I make this one more big deal of drugs, everything's going to go my way, right? Mm-hmm. It's a familiar template, and that's a good and bad thing because I had an into it. I get this redemption story, and I get that this character has way more dimension than Shaft was ever able to have because he's at war with himself. He has doubts. He has worries. Shaft, none of that, right? So even though he's, quote-unquote, what could be described as a gangster or a bad guy, because we know that he's trying to change and do right, we can cheer for him and fear for him. That's what was missing in Shaft.
Okay.
I could cheer for Shaft, but I could never fear for Shaft, right?
Okay.
As this movie was playing out, I honestly didn't know if it was going to work out for Superfly, if this was going to be a cautionary tale. Because either way, I think the pro African-American angle would work. If, he ended up dying in a hail of bullets, but he was trying to change, he was trying to do good, it would still be a powerful story for the community, right? But they give him a win that we want him to have, right? So because it's familiar in the story, we've seen this before, so I kind of am more comfortable ground, and that I can fear for my character, and I feel more for the character. I was 200% more involved in Superfly than I was in any of the Shaft movies. Even the stuff that I would complain about that was present in the Shaft movies, like the endless car sequences of people like driving from point A to point B, it honestly felt like they only had an hour of movie. And they just sort of like stretched it out. But instead of it feeling like filler, it felt like atmosphere, because it was a micro-budget movie too. They were like getting weird angles and weird shots from across the street, probably shooting without permits, right? So it almost looked like Superfly was under some kind of surveillance. Like, I could make excuses for the movies that made sense to me, and I got into the world and I cared about what was going on. Like I said, more than any of the Shaft movies. So far of the Blaxploitation movies that we've talked about, I think Superfly is handily the best of them. But I'm happy to hear a second opinion.
It's definitely, I think, a little more complex of a story, and there's a huge, at least, drive for authenticity that the Shaft films, I think, tended to like poo-poo away from.
He still sleeps with all the women, and he's still super stylish.
Yeah.
But he exists in the real world.
Yeah. Producer Sig Shore saw the ticket returns for Badass, a sweet bad song, but also Shaft, and wanted to get in on this market. And so he got in touch with the director of Shaft's son, Gordon Parks Jr., and together they made Superfly, which is sort of this weird little connection, and actually used a lot of the people who were involved making the Shaft also got involved in making of Superfly. What they wanted to do was show a lot more authentic story of what, at least according to what the filmmakers have said during the documentaries here that I saw, was a lot more authentic, urban sort of.
There's a tactile handheld approach to the movie.
You can tell it's an independent movie
in a way that helps the grit feel like it's not a Hollywood movie trying to accomplish grit.
Yeah,
it's like legit grit. If that makes sense.
Well, yeah, and once again, they wanted to borrow off of that wave that the French Connection really sort of brought into mainstream media. Here's something though: the lead character is such a complex because he's not really your quote-unquote hero.
No,
he's
deeply flawed.
You do cheer for him, especially towards the end when he's, punching out the police commissioner. Spoilers! And his cop henchman, you're rooting for him because he's sticking it to the so-called man, if you will. But at the same time, it's a very cautionary tale. I don't remember him slapping it around any women, but he's definitely this...
He has several girlfriends who
social pariah.
He treats them indifferently.
He snorts cocaine out of a cross.
Yeah, that was one of the things right out of the gate that impressed me, because we first see him laying in the bed next to a naked woman, shocker of shocks, and he's got this cross around his neck. So I'm like, duality. He's a drug dealer, but he's a religious man. Yeah. But then we see him immediately use that cross to scoop and snort cocaine, and I'm like, already this is way more complex than Shaft ever was in any of the entries, right?
Yeah.
Like, this guy, there's duality to him, there's layers to him. Like, again, the treatment of women, I almost just have to choose to let go. Other interesting things about the movie, it kind of made me understand the respect, I guess, that gangsters get to certain people in the African culture. It's not that you're a drug dealer. It's that your entire life is in existence in opposition of the man, right?
Yeah.
Not only do you survive, but you thrive in that environment. What tends to always get ignored is all of the lives that get destroyed to the left and right, usually including their own.
Yeah, but we see that with Superfly.
That's what I'm saying. We see why these people are respected among their community and why they shouldn't be.
Yeah.
And that's, again, more than Shaft ever offered, right?
Yeah.
I appreciated that.
I think of that chase sequence. The movie actually starts where it follows two junkies who go around sort of carelessly robbing people, and eventually they make the decision to try and rob Priest Youngblood.
Yeah.
And we get that chase sequence, which is sort of beautifully shot through the back alleys and streets of New York City. And eventually Superfly, Priest, catches up with the one who's still running, climbs up into his apartment, and Superfly gets a hold of him and beats him brutally in front of his family and kids. Like, the guy's vomiting up drugs. It's so bad. You're kind of going, oh, like, is this guy someone we want to root for?
But he was going to make a buy, so presumably that was a substantial sum of money.
I get why he chased him. Yeah, and I even get the whole why he beat him. It was just like,
that is not okay. Do not do that, or else this will happen to you.
Yeah.
But again, there's layers to that character, and what does he feel about it afterwards too?
Yeah.
And there is real hatred in that character for white people, right?
Yeah.
But we understand where it comes from. There's a scene early in the movie where another gangster refers to him as white looking.
Yeah.
And he loses his composure completely over it.
Yeah.
I'm a gangster, I'm a drug dealer, I'm a criminal, but don't call me white. I will kick your fucking head in.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So he's got his own biases and flaws as well, but he wants to break this pattern. He wants to change. And typically the trajectory in this, I think I always go to Carlito's Way because that was the first one that I saw that really connected with me, of that the guy who's been so bad for so long is trying to make a change but cannot seem to exist. Like it never seems to work out. The reward of Superfly, not Superbad, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The reward of Superfly is that he does get away with, like, quote, get away with it. He more than gets away with it. He paints himself into a corner.
He goes to Europe by the end of the... Well,
he
in the
paints
sequel,
himself into
he's
a
ended up
corner.
in Europe, yeah.
He knows who all of the corrupt cops are, and they all know who he is, but they can't do a thing about it. They can't do a thing about it. He's in a position where he can wave a middle finger at the man and walk away. And that's what's going to be the big win for the audience of this movie.
Yeah.
It's not that the drug dealer got away with it necessarily. It's that he spit in the face of the man, and the man just had to take it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And again, I completely understand why that would connect, and like I'm sort of on board for it.
Yeah.
Is Priest a good guy? Does he walk away from this clean? Is he still going to have a drug problem? Is his life probably still going to be connected in some way to criminal enterprises and violence? Likely. Like, I don't think this has been the be-all, end-all solution. But a guy who never gets a win gets a win.
Yeah.
And in a better way than it ain't hard being a pimp, by the way.
Yeah.
Because fuck that. How many dicks did you suck today? Oh, none? Then it's not quite as hard to be a pimp as it is to be a prostitute, is it? Right? So, yeah. They kind of glamorize it, but they show it for its ugliness.
Well, there's also a line that said more than once is that, you know, the white man only wants us to make us money via drug dealing. So they're even talking about systematic racism in this film.
Then by being a drug dealer, you're playing into the white man's hand.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So it's less a glamorization and more an examination.
Yep. Yeah.
And I can respect that.
Yeah. No. Out of all the 6 films, this is the one that stayed with me the most. I found that sort of surprising.
It was the mean streets of this list.
Kind of. I saw it a couple of times. When I first saw it, I had real problems with the Youngblood character. Because I really sort of took him as a really anti-hero. And I still think he is. But what I caught the second time a lot more was this desire to... The whole end game is to get out of it. I'm looking for the big score, the big one, to get out of it.
I'm getting their names confused, but there's the trifecta of the 3 gangsters who we get most to know. The older guy who they get the big deal out from, who ends up getting iced.
Yeah.
And then his younger partner, who he brings in on this deal on the auspices that this will be their last job. But the deeper into the job they get, the more it's clear that to the Priest character, it's his last job. But to his partner, it's the next job.
Yeah, but he said in the beginning, like, you know, we've made so much money doing this, why do you want to give this up, kind of thing.
But we see them slowly sort of
and
going
he's the
their
one
separate
that
ways.
kind of betrays him a little bit.
So the father figure, and again, the father figure is a gangster drug dealer. It's not necessarily... He's portrayed positively, but I mean, if you look at it with clear eyes, you know, but he seems resigned to the corruption, and he knows to try and bend the rules in any way is probably going to fuck him. And you know what?
Yeah.
He's right.
Yeah.
And he loses huge, right? And Priest sees that as his future.
Yeah.
And he's changed that fate. His fate may not be perfect, but it's not going to be that fate.
Yeah.
It gave me the most to think about it. It was the most familiar in story structure, but again, the most successful in its storytelling.
Yeah, no. I think what made this movie a step higher was, like I said, it's at least its desire to be a lot more authentic, true.
Yeah.
And that's what sort of dragged me in. I really like Ron O'Neal, actually. I know you sort of argue he is miles better than Richard Roundtree.
He's an actor. I think he's asked mainly to do what Richard Roundtree does, but I think there's a little bit more of a performance coming there.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of the performance is him looking cool in locations and shaking hands with people, and then they leave. Like, I won't lie, there is filler in this movie, but whereas I was watching the Shaft trilogy, and they would go to one of these segue scenes or one of these music numbers, and I could feel my shoulders slump and be like, oh shit, now I gotta wait for the story to start in another 5 or 10 minutes, right? I didn't necessarily feel that shoulder slump happen with Superfly. I felt I was into the world enough that I just absorbed the atmosphere. It didn't seem as distracting to me.
Okay. But no, once again, I like the music of Superfly. Curtis Mayfield.
The Pusher Man. Again, I appreciate that song. Listen to the lyrics as they're being sung. It is not a positive portrayal of a drug dealer.
No, but
your
it's
Pusher
more
Man, your friendly neighborhood Pusher Man is not somebody that you should want to be.
Yeah.
Good enough?
Good enough.
Man, that broad is 10 miles of bad road. You are no match for that black lady.
I'll take care of Cleopatra Jones.
Cleopatra Jones, starring Tamara Duff, co-starring Bernie Casey, Brenda Sykes, Esther Rolle, and Shelley Winters as Mommy.
And with your love, oh honey, you ship me.
That's what I call some extra heavy double duty stuff.
So I was just complimenting Superfly that it felt much more real world than the Shaft movies, and therefore I liked it. What I'm going to do is the reverse of that for Cleopatra Jones and say that Cleopatra Jones is not in the real world at all, and for that reason I really enjoyed it. It's closer to what I expected Shaft was going to be.
Okay.
In that, like, everybody knows who Cleopatra Jones is. We don't as audience members, but in this world, everybody knows who Cleopatra Jones is. This chick can gun down 3 guys in an airport and just walk away from it and tell the local police to handle it. Right?
Shows them a badge, just sort of like nonchalant.
I just killed 3 people and I got places to be.
Yeah.
It's completely ludicrous. The first opening moments of the movie, she's destroyed this poppy field in, where were they?
Pakistan, I want to say.
I don't remember. It's not really important. She destroys like $30 million worth of poppies and really undercuts the industry of this gangster Mommy, played by Shelley Winters.
Academy Award winner 2 times.
Everybody in the movie is a kind of a cartoon. And the movie's kind of okay with it. I remember this movie in the opening credit sequence goes out of its way to credit this sensei who taught and executed and choreographed all of these amazing karate fights, which are, again, hilariously PG and tame, like, not convincing or credible at all. But in a way has to be kind of charming at the same time. There's a great scene where there's an attempted assassination on Cleopatra Jones. These 2 guys are shooting at her and her boyfriend from a rooftop, and she's firing back. And the squibs are not hitting anywhere close to anybody. It's like both sides, like 2 groups of stormtroopers trying to shoot each other. But again, huge smile on my face while this is happening. Does it have prolonged sequences of people driving from point A to point B? Does it have like scenes where everything stops for a club number while this woman sings? Does it have characters that talk for a long time about stuff that has nothing to do with the plot? Yes. And I'm all smiles. This is the kind of, I think, energetic, fun vibe that older Tarantino movies really kind of cashed in, right? And it's silly, it's over the top, it's not the real world, but it's fun enough that you can get behind it. you are not going to learn anything from Cleopatra Jones. It's not in any way a smart movie, but it's fun, it's stylish. I can get off on Cleopatra Jones the way some women can maybe get off on Richard Roundtree, right?
Sure.
I can. She's a very attractive woman,
Yeah.
and she's more than just set dressing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess that's my opening salvo. Is Cleopatra Jones a smart movie? No. Is it a fun movie? Yes. Did I have fun watching the movie? Yes.
Yeah.
Again, it's one of those things, if someone said, is it a good movie? Okay, I don't know if I could say it's a good movie, but I could say, sure, watch it. Check it out.
It's entertaining. Yeah. Almost in a it's so bad it's good kind of way, almost.
But it would feel uncharitable to call it bad at the same time, but it's...
It's a film of its time.
Yes.
Once again, it's a James Bond movie. You've said it. I knew I was all smiles and all in, even from the opening minutes when it's actually Turkey. They're
Turkey,
in,
is it?
where
Okay.
you've got like two different armies coming together, and they're all walking around, kind of like, "Why are we here? What are we doing?"
Oh, Cleopatra Jones is here. Well, follow her orders.
Yeah. Is she here yet? Is she here yet? And she comes just like wading on through, and it's almost like you've got the hero music. Once again, they got that opening hero shot. And she's wearing this like gorgeous outfit and stands on top of this like sandy hill a la Lawrence of Arabia
to watch the explosion
of all the poppy fields. And just like, yeah, she's a bad mother. The film is redonkulous and embraces the redonkulousness. I even wonder, even at the time, that they knew that they were making a ridiculous movies.
Well,
case in point, Shelley Winters
Mummy,
as
which is,
Mama.
Mummy's a really problematic character, I guess, again, watching through the lens of 2019.
Yeah.
In that she clearly is a vilification of homosexuality, kind of parceled into her character.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily subtle. It's not the only thing that she does. Like, she does, hire assassins, and she does have an army of men that she's in charge of and everything like that. But there's this sort of B-plot, quote, a bunch of back humor about Mama having, these sexy malls that hang out around her. And
Well, isn't it her family also? Like, just
I think it's her family in the way, like, the
mobsters
mobster
okay.
family.
All right.
I didn't think that she was literally sleeping with her daughters, but she might call them in.
See, that was the one thing I kind of turned my head a little bit. Is like, is this family or?
I watched too many documentaries about prison life, but a lot of times the female gangsters are controlling their floors will have families. They'll talk about their daughters, their nieces, their nephews. But because they're in the family, that doesn't preclude any kind of sexual exchange. I don't know if it's fair to put that on her, but I don't think that the movie's being subtle about she's a lesbian and that's part of the reason that she's...
You're the only one that knows how to make Mama happy. Yeah, I know.
And that feeds into the badness of her character. We should be less sympathetic to her.
Yeah.
Again, it's going to go to another level when we talk about Blacula too, but it's interesting because they're trying to be all, positive and do good things for this one put upon subgroup while simultaneously shitting on another.
Yeah.
It's like, black people are awesome, and black people we can all agree that homosexuals are awful, right? See, that's something we can bond, right? Yeah. And it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate, but because the movie is so wall-to-wall ridiculous, that's fine.
But she drives a nice car.
Yeah. She drives a nice car, and she doesn't treat men necessarily like tissue paper. She doesn't have that same aspect that she knows that every man that she sees wants to sleep with her.
But she's saving herself, but for one.
Exactly.
Great character actor Bernie Casey as well.
Who's another one of those guys like, oh, I've seen you before. As soon as he was on screen, you've been around the block a few times.
Yeah. Yep.
So... I like it, but again, it's got every cliche. It's got a car chase in the LA River, which is like, they don't do those anymore because they've been so done. It was like after Terminator 2, they just retired it, right?
That cliche, yeah.
But at the time this was shot, it wasn't as much. But it sort of feels like, well, that's where car chases happen in these movies, and it's still in its own way kind of a fun, like a Waka Chicka experience when that's happening. And I like that she's good at everything that she does, and some way. Even when they don't really convince you of it, there's this hilarious scene.
Yeah.
In the early 70s, dirt biking was really cool for some reason. People were like, all about
there's that weird
evil
sequence.
Knievel.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's got to talk to a guy, but he's in the middle of doing some bike race or something like that. So she talks a guy out of his motorbike, charms him out of his motorbike, and then she drives it up a steep hill, and we're supposed to be like, but she's a girl. Right?
Yeah.
And she doesn't even do any ramps or participate in the race in any way. She just drives up a hill and kicks up a lot of dirt and then stops. And the guy's like, if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I wouldn't have believed it.
Yeah.
You drove that bike like 10 feet up a hill. Well done.
I got a spot.
Again, hilarious.
Yeah, I know. I got a soft spot for these like one-hit wonder actors. Tamara Dobson. I wonder whatever happened to her, because all I can really find is that and this movie made a sequel, where these two movies, and then that's it. But Cleopatra Jones made a good chunk of money. You would think that her career could have gone on more, but I can't find a whole lot about her.
Interesting in that, like, it feels like a middle chapter to like when we dive into this movie, like it feels like we should already know who Cleopatra does. Like they do no work about her background.
Yeah, it's just like she's here and she's awesome.
Has she always been here? Did she like land in some farm backyard? Is she like a Superman type of figure that's happening here? Like, we don't know. It's interesting that they didn't even bother with the origin story. It's just like they know that the origin's not as interesting, right?
Yeah.
Becoming the one is not as interesting as being the one. Well, some people argue. I would say the opposite. But they weren't interested in telling us her origin story. They were just interested in showing us this badass, Cleopatra Jones.
Yeah.
And I was receptive to it.
Yeah.
I didn't fight it. I don't know if I was fighting Shaft or not, but again, this is what I thought Shaft was going to be. I thought Shaft was going to be over the top and funny and kind of silly and fun. Yeah. And that's what Cleopatra Jones was for.
Yep.
So that's what I like it for.
There is one thing I do want to talk about, and once again, I am by no means an expert. It was just something that went through my head, and that it sort of talks about, there's that scene in Jerry Maguire. I'm sure you've seen that movie with Tom Cruise and
been a long time.
Renee Zellweger and Cuba Gooding Jr. There's a scene in that movie where Cuba and his wife, and I forget the female actor's name who plays his wife, I'm truly sorry, they're having a conversation with Tom Cruise and Renee Zellweger at a restaurant, and they talked about how they saw a black movie, an African-American movie, but all it really was young black men shooting violence, creating that stereotype of the angry young black men with guns. A racist stereotype, if you will. And I have often wondered about that. I mean, the 90s, we saw a huge influx of Boys in the Hood and
popularized by a big Cuba Gooding Jr. movie, I remember.
Menace to Society, we've got Sugar Hill. And a lot of these movies show a lot of young, black, angry men shooting in violence. The ultimate fear of, racist white America. Yeah. Here's an example. And it's the smaller scenes that sort of show Cleopatra, wandering through the neighborhood and runs into young kids and they're all guffaw, or older men sort of seen in the corner doing nothing, going ho ho ho, that Cleopatra Jones. It's the stereotypical jive talking, and I sort of say that with a question mark. I couldn't tell whether if that was like a white screenwriter showing what we think African American 1970s how they talk or not. It was the most predominant in this film, and so it was one of those, is this one of these sort of stereotypes that we think it's how they talk, but
I think
it seemed very cartoonish.
For me,
Uncle Tomish.
For me, it felt authentic,
yeah.
And I'm always highly suspicious of things that feel authentic.
Yeah.
It's the whole conversation we had about End of Watch.
Yeah.
And that, like, that movie feels really real, but I don't think that's an adequate description of what your average day of an LA cop is at all.
Yeah.
But the movie makes a compelling case. You almost want to believe it because of its style. I think there's a percentage of truth to that sort of really hip, jivey talk.
And I say this with question mark.
But is it hit a little bit heavy? Perhaps.
Yeah.
There's the whole subplot about this gangster group. I don't remember the characters' names, but they're defying Mummy.
Yeah.
Mummy, they were sort of one of her branches of distribution, and they decided she's fucked up her order too many times. She's been so crazy and inconsistent. We're done with her. We'll just run our own business. And it ends up costing them their lives. But we spend an inordinate amount of time with them.
Yeah.
And again, we're not sure how to feel about them. They have this proper British white butler that they all seem to really enjoy laughing at. They think it's really awesome that they have a white servant. I think it's just like they don't seem to appreciate the irony of that at all.
Oh, yeah.
And yet, when that character and a couple of the other women get killed, you're kind of like, oh, that's too bad. I sort of like the British butler. So they're not completely empty of our sympathy. But yeah, they're broad strokes in little ways. But I mean, the whole movie is painting pretty broad strokes. Like, it wasn't, if it was just those characters that I think were cartoons, Mummy is a cartoon. The correct cops are cartoons.
No.
Everybody. If it was just one group that was cartoons, then maybe I'd be, yeah. But this whole movie might as well have been animated. It might as well have been Fritz the fucking Cat.
Yeah.
Like, it's,
yeah.
It's nowhere near as harsh as that, but you know that.
Yeah,
that
I know.
vibe. Oh my God.
Yeah. I do want to talk about Shelley Winters, two-time Academy Award winner Shelley Winters. Wow, I haven't seen a whole lot of her work. I've seen the original Poseidon Adventure. Mm-hmm. I have seen Night of the Hunter, where she played, spoilers, the mother who gets murdered by Robert Mitchum. Apparently, she was in one of the original versions of Diary of Anne Frank as the mother of the house who helped save Anne Frank's family. Tries to anyways. But the Shelley Winters I've seen mostly is the sort of the very loud, screaming, large woman. And this is dialed up.
I think she's doing what the script is asking her to do.
And the director, yeah.
But it's not great. It's really shrill. I mean, you want to see her defeated. You don't like her.
Yeah.
She calls Cleopatra Jones a coon. That almost hurt more than any of the other words. So it's just because I hadn't heard it for so long. It's like, oh, God damn.
Yeah. It's like, woof.
You went there right away. It's one of the first things that comes out of her mouth, dude.
I want that. Dad is just like, oh.
But again, like, there's no, you're never worried that she's going to win in the end. And, you know, she gets punched out and thrown on a pile of garbage and stuff like this. There's an amusing scene where one of her lackeys, who has repeatedly failed her, gets slowly crushed in a compress and inside a car. You see it coming way before the character does, but that kind of makes it funny in a Wile E. Coyote sort of way. Again, it's good enough. It's fun. It's not deep.
No,
it's shallow as piss on a plate, actually. But if you had the same problem that I did and had this idea in your head that Shaft is some over-the-head cheese factory, it's not. If that's what you're looking for, I will direct you to
Cleopatra Jones. No, I mean, and that's what it is, simply put. But yeah.
Good enough?
Good enough.
You shall pay, Black Prince. I curse you with my name. You shall be Blacula.
Blacula, the Black Avenger, rising from his tomb to fill the night with horror. Blacula, Dracula's soul brother, deadlier even than he.
You know, he is a strange dude.
You're the nut that ran in front of my cab. You're the only imbecile on this street. Boy.
Blacula.
Look at man, you found, she's got to be around here somewhere. Now listen, you take your hands off of me. I don't know you.
He thirsts for your blood. He hungers for your soul. Warm young bodies will feed his hunger. Hot, fresh blood will quench his awful thirst.
So we found out something about
Blacula.
we've learned a lot of things about Dracula during his different incarnations, and we go into the back history of Vlad the Impaler and how even before he was a vampire, he had impaled thousands of people on wooden spikes. Mm-hmm. But it really hurt to find out on top of all of that he's a fucking racist.
Because that made him really bad.
He's really bad. He's not just a mass murderer.
He's
a racist mass murderer.
Yeah.
In the beginning of this movie, Blacula. Well, at the time,
No. Dracula. Prince or King Mama Walde
is meeting with this famous rich intellectual aristocrat Dracula to see if he can add some financial help to support him putting an end to the slave trade. And Dracula laughs this off because he's, well, what's wrong with the slave trade?
I've made lots of money off of it.
And after a little bit of small talk, he bites his or enslaves him, puts him in a coffin, dooming him to a life of wanting to drink blood but never be able to get it, and leaving his wife to die, mourning his enclosed body in this casket. Mm-hmm. And then we fast forward to modern day San Francisco, a couple of homosexuals. The movie never refers to them as homosexuals.
The end credits has it, and I apologize for these words, as Faggot 1 and Faggot 2.
Yeah. They are incredibly
folks.
Cringeworthy gay stereotypes.
Yeah.
And I wish I could say that they were pressing some buttons, because when Blacula emerges from his coffin, desperate for feeding, he sees these two guys and he eats them or drinks their blood right away. And I thought, oh well, the traditional Dracula story is all about enslavement and sexual power and violence, and the fact that in the 70s, he's got same-sex victims, that's maybe kind of edgy. But the movie's not thinking about it in those terms at all. In fact, all basically the conceit is Black Dracula. That's the. I mean, obviously it's in the title, but they didn't go beyond that at all. And it's a PG affair, which I think might have been a mistake. And as a horror movie, the emotional arc is, forgive the pun, a little bit toothless for me. Is it an enjoyable sort of smirk-worthy kind of look what they're doing next thing? And does it have its moments? Yes, absolutely. But in the end, when the credits rolled on Blacula, I was like, I don't know.
All right.
It wasn't hate. It wasn't love.
Okay.
It was, I don't know.
Well, I as you can tell probably from my smile, that I love this movie. If you remember back, Rank and Review listeners, that I had at number 25 as the top horror of the 70s, and I am about to lay down why. There's a long history of social commentary in black horror movies.
Or in horror movies, period.
Horror movies, period. But especially from early on, whether it be Blackenstein or Ganja and Hess, there is a sort of social justice theme going through it. And slavery is one with Blacula. And I'll get you right back to the start. Dracula, or Prince Mamuwalde, is put into his own slavery, a la vampirism, and his original name is taken away. He is given Blacula by his white slave owner, a.k.a. Dracula.
Yes.
And so he's fighting that his own slavery throughout that movie. And that's how
he?
Yeah, I think he is. The slavery took him away from the love of his life.
Yeah.
And I know that's the same trajectory as the Dracula story.
I get that. I think that the love story would have been better if the actress, Vonetta McGee...
Yeah.
Again, she felt like she looked the part, but she has to instantly see something in this man when he shows up. There's some fate that they're to be together. And I 100% didn't read that. I read it from him, not from her.
Yeah.
But as a result, the whole overarching thing didn't work. But because he's a man who has been fighting slavery and who was so repulsed by what Dracula, his racist speech, that he wanted to just leave, not even sit and talk to the man, not even share the same space, breathe the same air. He just wanted to walk away from it. You would think he would be defiant. Now I get he's been locked in that coffin for hundreds of years and he's starved, but he does not fight that he kills people and drinks their blood.
Yeah.
I don't see the torment in that. He didn't wake
but
up
he's
thinking,
that's because of the ills of slavery, if you will. He's
been conditioned, but those two, the faggots, to use the movies' vernacular, were his first two victims. He was made a vampire and then put in that coffin, and he laid in there. For me, I imagine it of suffering for insomnia for a couple hundred years in a coffin, right? And he breaks out of there, and he is desperately thirsty and hungry, and he would eat anyone or anything that was there. Yes. But then I expected oh my God, what have I done?
And he laughs.
And that never happens. He creates a whole bunch of vampires, doesn't care. He kills the cabbie, who's done nothing wrong. He kills, some of the cops are bad, but he doesn't differentiate good cop, bad cop. If they're in his way, he will kill them. And I didn't feel any oh my God, what have I become? He didn't wake up saying, I need to find and kill Dracula. You know? It's like, I would have liked to see that conflict. I did not see that conflict.
Yeah. No, I mean, it does eventually have to follow the story of Dracula. I get it.
And we want to cheer for the cops. So
Shout out to William Marshall, by the way, who plays Prince Mamawalde / Blacula.
Yeah, it's interesting that he gets bigger eyebrows when he vamps.
Yeah.
That's strange. There's almost a half Wolfman thing that happens with his facial hair when he becomes Blacula.
Yeah.
Also, shout out to our Canadian actor, Gordon Pinsett.
Yeah, good to see him.
Jack Peters, one of the good ones of the white characters.
Because there's got to be at least one of them.
There usually is.
We're not all bad.
I was going to say, in Cleopatra Jones, the one cop that we're set up to like, but actually turns out to be racist.
Yeah.
I honestly, sincerely didn't see that coming.
Okay.
In a movie that transparently stupid, they actually pulled the wool over my eyes.
Oh, hey, right on, Larry.
In this case, nothing that I saw really surprised me. But I like Gordon Pinsent. I like seeing him so young.
Yeah.
And again, he's helpful to the Dr. Thomas, the guy who's trying to put an end to it. The Van Helsing character.
Yeah. I do like Thalmus Razulala. He's the Van Helsing character in Blacula. But that's the actor's name.
Right.
Gordon Thomas, yes.
And we want to cheer for him. And I think that's why they didn't spend too much of a fuss about Blacula's torment.
Yeah.
They let him just be a vampire right away.
Which I think was ultimately smart.
Yeah. But again, if you're going for the tortured angle, if you're going for the Anne Rice vampire who's, I'm immortal, but I'm so unhappy. Which does nothing for me, by the way. But that's more of the traditional conceit of the Dracula legend, right?
Yeah.
It's, for some... I don't know. It's sort of like the weird attraction revulsion thing. Why a lot of women, I won't say all women, are attracted to bad men who are transparently, obviously bad, but somehow irresistible. That's what I think Dracula kind of speaks to.
Yes.
When Dracula shows up at your window in the middle of the night, having flown up as a bat and knocking on your window pane, asking to let you in, no part of you should say, yeah, I think I should let him in, right?
Yeah.
And yet he's just so seductive that you can't resist.
Yes.
None of that's here. None of that's here.
Because he's one strange dude. I don't know who that secondary character was, but I enjoyed him. I love the music once again in Blacula. It starts off with that sort of 70s funk. This is a big sort of love letter to the Hammer movies that are still very much alive. That's kind of what this sort of angle was, is let's make a African-American conscious movie, but a Hammer movie as well, a mixing of genres. So I guess there is a little sort of sentimentality that I have for the love of this movie. Mm-hmm. I'm just now getting into Hammer films as well, but it is a gothic horror film, with, dark shadows and castles and cobwebs, and then, let's change it to 1970s San Francisco. But that's this style here.
It's one of the earlier modern vampire movies. Still in the 70s, they were doing the period vampires.
Yes.
Still the old mansions or the old castles and cobwebs and whatnot.
Yeah.
It was kind of fresh, I think, especially in 73, to see a vampire in San Francisco.
Yeah.
In what was then modern times in San Francisco.
But I don't know if this is the film that started that subgenre of black horror films, but this is one of the earliest. So for lovers of that particular subgenre, I think you kind of need to see Blacula. I don't know. It never takes itself too seriously, which is, I think, one thing which I like a lot about my blaxploitation films. As much as I like Superfly, it is a lot of fun, and it puts a smile on your face. I think it also treats its ghouls with respect. I mean, yes, it's a PG movie. There's this one sequence where we know that there's a vampire, that taxi driver, defrosting.
I want to talk about that's Ketty Lester playing Juanita Jones.
Okay.
I liked her both as the cab driver and as the vampire when she turns. I think that it's one of those things where an actor took a small role and made a meal out of it. Because there's the sort of stereotypical role of the aggressive, loud black woman, who's going to tell you just exactly what she thinks of you, and you're not going to get a word in edgewise. And that could have been all that she was. Like, she hits this guy in a cape with her cab because he runs in front of her car. So she gets out of the cab and tells him, like, what the fuck is your problem? I could have killed you, you son of a bitch. And she's kind of right. So, like, I kind of
she's completely right.
I felt bad for her that she got bit, because she sees the way that he's not properly reacting to being injured. And the way that he's furious with her because he sees it as her fault that this happened to him. You can sort of see her switch from being aggressive in your face to, but let's just go our separate ways. And then she's bit, and then she wakes up and she has this big vamp out scene where she runs across the hall to the camera, and there's nothing recognizable about that vampire to the character Juanita Jones that we saw earlier. Again, I always have respect for there's no small parts. You know what I mean? It's the one scene role in The Big Lebowski of the cop at the impound yard, right? He had one scene and he fucking nailed it, right?
Leads.
Exactly. There are no small parts, only small actors. And I noticed her enough that I actually specifically wanted to mention her.
No, she's good. She handles that whole sequence pretty well. Even when I first saw it, I was like, ooh, that's kind of creepy.
You're not victim number 2. This is a character.
And part of it's makeup, but part of it is how she sells it. She does really, really well. For a film that I thought was not going to be, and I don't think it's the least bit scary, but it was one of those scenes where I was like, you did kind of well there, Blacula. So I wanted to give a shout out to her. Look, this movie is dumb fun. It's dumb fun. It's an old Hammer movie mixed in with, like I said, the blaxploitation. Is it going to change the world? No. But I sort of see this, and stop me if I'm wrong, as one of the big granddaddies of black horror that seems to be making a big comeback right now. Get Out really brought it back, if you will, but there's a long history, whether it's Tales from the Hood or, Terror on Skull Mountain. There's a whole long line here, and Blacula is one of those big granddaddies that I think people need to see.
I'm not going to hold the movie's hand in anything or give it any specific points because of what it is when it is. I'm going to look at this movie as a strict genre outing. And here what I see is a vampire movie that is neither tragic, romantic, or scary. So on some level, I couldn't say that it was 100% successful. Was I bored while I was watching it? Did I have a good time while I was watching? Yeah, absolutely I did. But I mean, it's not going to scare you, it's not going to thrill you, and it's not going to...
But it's fun,
It's not going to touch you emotionally. So I would be prepared for that.
I think you get right from the opening credits that this movie really aims to be fun. From its opening score with the bat chasing the red stick figure. Like, I don't think its design was ever to be overly terrifying. But it has a little bit of everything, a little bit of scare, a little bit of sass, maybe not romance, if you will. I mean, the female actor is very pretty to look at, but most of all, it's fun. And I think if you take that meal, you can get some other things about it. I
appreciated that even though the Van Helsing figure is repeatedly getting frustrated with the Gordon Pinsent character, that Gordon Pinsent, even though he's pissed off that he's being talked to like that, it's not because this is a black person talking that way. It's because it's his friend. And when they go to the morgue and he finally sees a vampire, he concedes, you're right, I would not have believed you unless I saw it.
Yeah.
And the fact that they paid that much attention to detail, that their friendship was strong enough that they survived that war of words until that happened. Again, a lot of blaxploitations would have just said, white cop is unhelpful, and left it at that.
Yeah.
So I appreciated it. Again, another full character. And the movie, by the parameters of its existence, did not require a full character out of Gordon Pinson, but we got one anyway. They did not require a full character out of that cab driver, but we got
one anyway. I do like the sequence as well in the dark room where that one photographer was starting to develop the films, and then soon realizes that, hey, where's Prince Mamawalde? And then Mamawalde shows up. I thought that was sort of a well put together sequence as well.
Again, a missed opportunity for me is like she knows his secrets, so he has to kill her. So maybe he's killing her, but he feels kind of bad about it now. Dead. Right? Just I would have handled it a little bit differently, but I don't think it sucks. I think again, I'm so sorry. It's fine.
All right.
Anything else you want to say?
No, I think that's about it. I say check back Blacula out.
No, give it a stand for it. And that was 6 blaxploitation films reviewed by Lee Beckmann and Larry Parsons.
Enough.
Out of sight.
Brother from another mother. Yep.
It's all right. Again, even though I didn't have as much fun as maybe I would have hoped with these movies, I mean, I'm going to say thank you anyway, because I don't know if I would have got around to it. They're completely different, but I kind of feel similarly when Eric and Ashley wanted to do the Rocky movies.
Yeah.
I was kind of like, fine, to the Rocky movies. But to my surprise, I actually kind of had more fun with the Rocky movies revisiting them than I imagined that I would. I guess I had a bit of an attitude about them. I had less history going in with these blaxploitation movies, but if I'm going to call myself a cinephile and think myself worthy of other people caring about my opinion, maybe there are some areas that I should be more familiar with, and I can check this box off for the time being.
And this is why
I know that 6 movies does not make me an expert, but I can feel like I can know what I'm talking about when people are talking about blaxploitation cinema.
You ready?
So, that out of the way. What was your least favorite of these 6 films and why?
Well, at the end of the day, I'm going to have to go at number 6 with Shaft's big score. I still liked it. It doesn't change the wheel at all. It's got a bigger budget. It's got some pacing issues, I think. There's lots of long shots of cars driving with some music. But something has to be number 6.
Yeah.
I would have to say is Shaft's big score. The reason I have Shaft in Africa at number 5, I love the ridiculous nature of it.
You were able to laugh at it?
I think able to more laugh at it than with this movie. I think it achieved its goal somewhat, where it was going to be a silly James Bond film. It's ridiculous. I can understand the problems for it. I got a soft spot for social justice revenge fantasy movies. Once again, I call upon Inglourious Bastards as one. This is no different. This is, we see an African American taking on the white slave trade kind of thing. That's been one of those, title card fights that people want to see for years. And in exploitation films, that's one of the things that they do. So I guess I have just a little bit higher standing for Shaft in Africa. It's not a good film. I also love I laughed at our lead character gets kidnapped by this African gangster. Is that the beginning?
It's a blow dart.
A blow dart. Yeah. Actually, I thought that one was Zig Smokey. But anyways, so it's not a great movie. It's got some huge problems. If you can get past a lot of the awful stereotypes and just kind of like it for what it is, I think you will enjoy it. The movie is silly.
Yep.
Shaft in Africa.
Yep.
Number 4. Once again, a low-budget affair, and maybe because it's considered a classic, I have it higher, and that is the original Shaft. Richard Roundtree.
So Shaft is the bottom half of your list.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, I agree with you.
Okay.
Shaft I have at number 4. I really love the music with that movie. I'm actually kind of listening to it at home right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's, a Sam Spade story, Richard Marlowe. I don't think it reinvents the wheel of anything. It's got some creaks and moans. The sort of race baiting makes me laugh a little bit, stinging it to the white man. Just tell me, Shaft, what's going on? Just give me the score.
Please, Shaft.
Please, can I get a high five from you? Right on.
I want to be cool, too.
Right on, brother. Yeah, so at number 4, I have Shaft. At number 3, I have the completely ridiculous Cleopatra Jones. It doesn't pretend to be anything more than it is. It is a James Bond film, but this time it is not even a stereotypical sassy black female character. She's just cool as ice with a cool gun and a cool car who loves her fighting against the system boyfriend who she's trying to help.
Yeah.
The opium drug trade against the evil whitey Shelley Winters. It's silly. Sort of a big budget blaxploitation film. I'd say check it out. Cleopatra Jones. Number 2, we have the 70s classic Superfly. I thought about putting this movie at number 1, but I kind of went more with my own sentimentality and taste a little bit. Some people may have a problem with the lead character of Priest Youngblood, and I can understand that. It is a sort of low-budget, gritty affair. It's got the great music by Curtis Mayfield, by the way.
My personal favorite, I think.
Yeah.
At least on first pass of all the movies, the music stood out for me in that.
Yeah. I'd say check it out, just for lover of films in general. This is one of the staples of blaxploitation. I think you need to check it out. So number 2 is Superfly, and last but not least, I think you all knew it was going to be number 1 even from the beginning. It's Blacula, a loving tribute to the Hammer horror films, but mixed in with some 1970s black consciousness, blaxploitation, whatever you want to call it. This movie is silly. It never pretends to be any more than that. It's got a little bit of a social message. It's got all the loving 70s tropes, the long musical sequences that go on and on and on with the style, and a couple of names that for film nerds are like, hey, that guy or that person. So at number 1, I have the cult classic Blacula.
Well, look, we have incredibly different lists, but that's okay. I don't think we're going to have a fight about it. I'm not going to flip this table and say, how dare you put Blacula at the top of the list.
Yeah.
I put Shaft in Africa at the bottom.
Yeah, I anticipated that.
I think that I was able to laugh at it a few times, and if you're able to laugh at it and get joy out of that, then maybe it'll rank higher for you.
Yeah.
But enough of it was edging on genuinely kind of offensive.
Yeah, I can see that.
That I was like, no, I think it has to be the bottom. So, it's an is what it is movie in a lot of ways, and I think in spite of it not taking the slavery seriously, it still has its heart kind of in the right place.
Yeah.
But again, it's a different time now, and it's sort of shocking at the indifference with which some of this material is treated.
Yeah.
I will put Shaft's big score in 5th position.
Yeah.
It's a bigger, more sprawling than the original Shaft, but I don't know that it's helped by that.
Yeah.
As again, I was not completely on board with the whole Shaft vibe. He's just this untouchable superhero who the world won't get to him, the whitey won't get to him, the criminals won't get to him. He's ungettable.
Yeah.
And that makes him kind of...
Because he's the man.
He's the man.
He's John Shaft.
no one understands him but his woman.
Yeah.
And who that woman is in a given time changes. So it's just funny because it's true.
Yeah.
So in fourth place, Shaft. Again, it establishes the character. It's Richard Roundtree, looking the part, maybe not playing the part, but it's a much more straight-faced movie than I was anticipating. Again, that's probably more on me than on the movie, but I just had less fun with the Shaft franchise than I wanted to, so it makes up the bottom half of my list.
Yeah.
And this is the part where I hurt your feelings.
Aww.
In third place, I'm going to put Blacula.
You're caring about my feelings. That's so sweet.
It's fine, and it's kind of amusing. It does have some guffaw moments.
Yeah.
Again, you gotta take some of the treatment of the homosexual characters real hard on the chin.
Yeah.
Because it's not a statement on it. It's not like a comment on it.
Yeah.
It's pure, unadulterated homophobia being broadcast loudly. Yes. So if that's gonna bother you, I would say actually maybe avoid
Blacula. It's
But if you can get over that hurdle, it's a pretty bare bones retelling of Dracula.
Yeah.
And again, not as scary as I wanted and not as emotional as I wanted. So third place.
Okay.
Second place, Cleopatra Jones.
Yep.
Like, this is probably just the dumber version of Shaft, right? This is what I thought what I wanted from Shaft, I got from Cleopatra Jones. I had a smile on my face through the whole movie. The stuff that was stylistically working against me in Shaft kind of started working for me a little bit in Cleopatra Jones because I was just able to embrace it because I wasn't being asked to take it seriously, I guess.
Yeah.
Maybe that's all it came to. Although, I'll contradict myself, because Superfly, arguably the only movie that's asking you to take it seriously, I did take seriously, and because of that, I appreciated it. I appreciated the depth of character. I appreciated that the music numbers and the sort of segue scenes getting us to and from places felt more about a piece of atmosphere than just a necessity of the genre.
Yep.
It actually helps build the tension and tell the story as opposed to...
An established mood,
Yeah, as opposed to, now let's kill 5 minutes of movie because we got to make it to 90 minutes, right? Because honestly, that's what some of it felt like in some of the Shaft movies and in some of the Blaxploitation. So, Superfly, number one, the most complex, the most real, and the biggest surprise for me of the bunch. Other than that, I just didn't get that into Shaft, and I thought I would. So we didn't go 6 for 6. We didn't go 0 for 6. But like again, I'm not wagging my finger at you and saying you're wrong, Beckmann. I mean, I feel like I'm a little bit out of my element here, and no regrets. No regrets.
There you go.
I mean, I won't lie. I'm not like in a mad hurry to watch a bunch of 70s Blaxploitation right now. I think I'm ready to cleanse the palate and go in a different direction.
I understand. I'm sure I'm going to put this away as well.
But it was interesting. So thank you for making me push my boundaries.
There you go. That is why we're here. That is why we are here.
Is there anything you'd like to say to the kids on the internet before we bring this episode of Rank and Review to an end?
I say, shut your mouth. No. Thank you for having me. It's always a joy to be here. You know that I hound you constantly. It's starting to be a problem. I'm going to therapy about it.
Yeah, I need more guests for Rank and Review. See, if more people don't come to do Rank and Review, Beckmann's just going to take over the show. It's just going to be the Larry and Lee show.
You say that like a bad thing.
You want it to be the Larry and Lee show. I mean, a lot of the people who at this point heard my found footage episode maybe have learned just how much I rely on having someone to talk to. So thanks.
But it really should it be me? Should it be me?
Well, I like to get diverse voices. I would like some younger people on the show.
Yes.
I would like more women on the show.
Yeah.
Because there's this sort of idea that only dudes like horror movies.
Yeah.
And if you look at a lot of like on YouTube and stuff like that, all these movie review, horror review channels.
Yeah, there's a lot of dudes.
I've been noticing though, there's quite a few women. Maybe
That's
the women
good.
are more popular. Maybe their channels are getting more popular. But
well, I'm trying, dude. Like I do plug the show, and I do plug it to like all kinds of people.
And I appreciate it. I'm just putting an open letter. You can write me at ranknreview@gmail.com. If you do FaceTime, if you do Skype, if you really feel like you have something to say, write me. And like I would love to have more get a variety of guests. But I always know that if that doesn't happen, you're my boy. You're gonna be there for me every time.
Yeah.
So Yeah, if you like Beckmann, just do nothing.
And all of a sudden, there's a long list of guests that pop up.
If you're not indifferent to Beckmann's presence, please write your case why you should be a guest on Rank and Review.
You don't even have to write your case. Just say, shut him down.
Just pick me.
Please.
Pick me. All right, we got through that list of Blaxploitation, complete with all of Larry's strange white guilt. But I think I mostly enjoyed it. Like I said, I wanted to like the Shaft trilogy more than I did, and that they kind of bled together and didn't do as much for me. But I did find a lot interesting in the rest of the movies, so I hope I didn't offend anybody. We'll be back to more regular R&R content in the upcoming episodes. But do send me that feedback to ranknreview@gmail.com. Do you like these episodes that go off in different directions, or should I be more disciplined about sticking to horror, sci-fi, and fantasy? Or are there other areas of cinema that you think I should kick the door down and try something different? So any feedback you have, ranknreview@gmail.com. ranknreview@gmail.com. Apparently a few people have trouble with the and review. It's not rank and review. It's rank and review because I'm super cool. If you enjoy Rank and Review, I think you will also enjoy the Terror Table podcast. So do check out the Terror Table podcast wherever fine podcasts are found. And please tell your friends about Rank and Review. Word of mouth is the best weapon I have to get Rank and Review out there to more ears. If you're listening to this show, I consider you a friend. Keep doing it.